little orphan girl asked the millionaire CEO, "Are you my father?" What he says leaves everyone shocked. Before we jump in, this story reached people in over 50 countries last week. Let's see how far it goes today. The marble floors of Wellington. Industries gleamed under the crystal chandeliers as Marcus Wellington strode through the lobby, his Italian leather shoes clicking with authority. At 50, he commanded respect with every step, his silver-streaked hair perfectly styled, his charcoal suit tailored to perfection. The empire he'd built from nothing stretched across 3 states, and today's board meeting would seal the biggest deal of his career. "Mr. Wellington," his assistant Catherine called, hurrying to match his pace. "The charity representatives are here for the photo opportunity." Marcus barely glanced up from his phone. "5 minutes, Catherine. I have real business to attend to." The lobby buzzed with activity as photographers set up their equipment. A small group of children from St. Mary's orphanage stood near the reception desk, their faces scrubbed clean, wearing their best clothes. Marcus had agreed to this publicity stunt reluctantly. His PR team insisted charitable appearances would soften his ruthless reputation. He approached the group with his practiced smile, the one that had closed million-dollar deals and charmed investors. The children looked up at him with wide eyes, intimidated by his imposing presence. "Good morning, children," he said, his voice carrying across the marble expanse. "I hope you're enjoying your visit to—" A small hand tugged at his expensive suit jacket. Marcus looked down to see a little girl, no more than 8 years old, with tangled brown hair and the most piercing green eyes he'd ever seen. Something about those eyes made his chest tighten unexpectedly. "Excuse me, mister," she said, her voice clear and innocent, cutting through the lobby's chatter like a bell. Marcus knelt down, surprised by his own gesture. The cameras began clicking, capturing what they assumed was a tender moment between the billionaire and the orphan. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. The little girl studied his face intently, her head tilted to one side. Then, in a voice that carried to every corner of the silent lobby, she asked the question that would change everything. "Are you my daddy?" The lobby fell completely silent. Cameras stopped clicking. Even the elevator music seemed to pause. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as he stared into those familiar green eyes, eyes that looked exactly like his own. What did you say?" he whispered, his usual confidence crumbling. "My name is Emma Rose," she continued, oblivious to the shocked faces around them. "My mommy told me before she died that my daddy was a very important man who lived in a big building. She said he had green eyes just like mine, and that someday I'd find him." Marcus's hands began to tremble. The name Sarah Rose echoed in his memory like a ghost from 15 years ago. His former assistant, the woman who disappeared without explanation, leaving only a resignation letter and a forwarded address that led nowhere. Catherine stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "Perhaps we should—" "She said his name was Marcus," Emma continued, her innocent voice cutting through Catherine's words like a knife. "And that he was the most powerful man in the city, but also the loneliest." The cameras erupted in a frenzy of flashing lights as reporters realized they were witnessing something far more explosive than a charity photo op. Marcus Wellington, the man who'd never shown weakness, sat frozen on his knees in his own lobby, staring at a little girl who might just be his daughter. Marcus's penthouse office felt like a prison as he paced behind his mahogany desk, the city, skyline blurring through floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 hours had passed since Emma's question shattered his world, and he couldn't shake the image of those green eyes, so achingly familiar. "Sir, the board meeting," Catherine began, but Marcus cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Cancel everything," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need you to find someone." Sarah Rose. She worked here 15 years ago, administrative assistant in the marketing department. Catherine's fingers flew across her tablet. "Sir," I've already started preliminary research. Sarah Rose Mitchell, employed here from 2009 to 2010. She left suddenly in March 2010. No forwarding address. March 2010. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering. It was the month after their brief but intense affair, when he'd still been married to Victoria. The month before his divorce was finalized. The month he'd convinced himself that what happened with Sarah was just a mistake, a moment of weakness during the darkest period of his life. There's more, Catherine continued carefully. I contacted St. Mary's Orphanage. Emma Rose Mitchell was admitted there 2 years ago after her mother's death. Cancer. The mother listed the father as unknown on all documents. Marcus sank into his chair, the weight of possibility crushing him. Get me Detective Morrison from downtown. I want a paternity test done immediately, and I want this kept quiet. Sir, there's already media attention. The lobby incident is trending on social media. Wellington Daddy is gaining traction. The irony wasn't lost on him. For years, he'd built his reputation on control, on knowing every variable before making a move. Now an 8-year-old girl had exposed him completely. His phone buzzed. Victoria, his ex-wife, her name flashing on the screen like a warning. Marcus, what the hell is going on? I'm seeing videos of you with some child claiming to be your daughter. This better not affect our son's reputation. Their son, James Wellington Jr., now 23 and working in London, who'd barely spoken to Marcus since the divorce. Another relationship destroyed by his ambition and emotional distance. I don't know anything yet, Victoria. It might be nothing. Nothing? Marcus, you're kneeling on a marble floor looking like you've seen a ghost. That's not nothing. That's a man confronting his past. She was right. That's exactly what this was, his past, rising from the ashes of his carefully buried mistakes. Detective. Rick Morrison had seen plenty of paternity cases, but none involving billionaires and orphan children in front of news cameras. He sat across from Marcus in the penthouse, his weathered face impassive as he reviewed the facts. The child's mother, Sarah Rose Mitchell, died of ovarian cancer 18 months ago. No family, no support system. The girl's been at St. Mary's since then. Morrison flipped through his notes. I've arranged for a discreet DNA test. We can have results in 48 hours. Marcus stared at the photograph Morrison had brought. Sarah's driver's license photo from 2015. She'd aged, grown thinner, but her eyes still held that same gentle intelligence that had drawn him to her all those years ago. Tell me about your relationship with Ms. Mitchell, Morrison continued. Marcus's jaw tightened. It was brief, inappropriate. I was going through a difficult divorce, and she was. She was kind to me. She listened when no one else would. Did she tell you she was pregnant? No, she just disappeared. Left a resignation letter saying she'd found another opportunity. I never heard from her again. Morrison nodded. According to neighbors, she was a devoted mother, worked 2 jobs to support the child, never spoke about the father, but Emma apparently knew some details. What kind of details? That her father was a powerful businessman in the city, that he had green eyes, that he was lonely despite his success. Morrison's voice carried a note of judgment. Sounds like she knew you pretty well. Marcus felt a stab of guilt. Sarah had seen through his facade, had known the man behind the empire, and if Emma was his daughter, Sarah had raised her alone, struggling while he lived in luxury, completely unaware. There's something else, Morrison continued. I spoke with Emma's social worker, Mrs. Chen. The girl's been asking about her father for months. She's convinced he's out there somewhere, waiting to find her. The weight of that revelation settled over Marcus like a lead blanket. While he'd been closing deals and building his fortune, his daughter, if she was his daughter, had been dreaming of a reunion that might never come. What happens if the test is positive? Marcus asked quietly. That depends on you, Mr. Wellington. and on what's best for the child. That evening, Marcus found himself in his study, surrounded by boxes from storage, remnants of his life from 15 years ago. His hands shook as he opened the first box, revealing files from the period when Sarah had worked for him. There, among the business documents, was a small envelope with his name written in Sarah's delicate handwriting. Inside, a simple thank you note for a birthday gift he'd given her, a leather-bound journal. "Thank you for seeing me as more than just an assistant. You have a good heart, Marcus, even when you try to hide it. I hope someday you find the happiness you deserve, Sarah." The memory hit him like a physical blow. Her birthday, February 14th, 2010. He'd been working late, trying to avoid going home to Victoria's cold silence. Sarah had stayed to help him prepare for a presentation, and when she'd mentioned it was her birthday, he'd felt compelled to do something special. They'd talked for hours that night, sharing stories about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. For the first time in years, Marcus had felt genuinely connected to another person. The kiss that followed had been inevitable, tender, desperate. But the next morning, guilt had consumed him. He'd convinced himself it was a mistake, that maintaining distance was the professional thing to do. He'd become cold, formal, treating Sarah like any other employee. 2 weeks later, she was gone. His phone rang, jarring him from the memory. Catherine's voice was tense. "Sir, we have a problem." Channel 7. News is running a story tonight. They've connected the dots between Sarah Mitchell and her employment here. They're calling it the billionaire's secret daughter. Marcus felt his world tilting. How much do they know? Everything. Employment records, timeline, even interviews with former colleagues who remember you two working late together. "Sir, this is going to explode." Through his window, Marcus could see news vans gathering in the street below. His private life was about to become public spectacle, and at the center of it all was an 8-year-old girl who just wanted to find her father. The irony was devastating. He'd spent his entire adult life building walls to protect himself from emotional pain. And now those walls were crumbling because of the one person who might actually love him unconditionally. Mrs. Dorothy Chen, the social worker from St. Mary's, sat across from Marcus in her cramped office, Emma's files spread between them. The walls were covered with children's drawings, each one a testament to hope in the face of abandonment. Sarah was very specific about Emma's placement, Mrs. Chen explained, her voice gentle but firm. She insisted that if anything happened to her, Emma should be told about her father only when she was old enough to understand. "But Emma's only 8, Marcus protested. "Yes, but she's exceptionally mature for her age. Losing her mother forced her to grow up quickly." Mrs. Chen pulled out a sealed envelope. "Sarah left this for you, Mr. Wellington. She said if you ever came looking for Emma, I should give it to you." Marcus's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter dated just 3 months before Sarah's death, written in the same delicate handwriting he remembered. "My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, then Emma has found you, just as I always knew she would. I never told you about her because I knew you weren't ready to be a father. Your heart was too closed, too protected by the walls you'd built around yourself, but Emma has a way of breaking down walls. She's stubborn like you, brilliant like you, but she has something you lost along the way. The ability to love without fear. I don't expect you to suddenly become the perfect father. I know you're probably terrified right now, questioning everything. But I need you to know that Emma is the best part of both of us. She has your determination and your intelligence, but she also has a heart that's wide open to the world. I'm not asking you to change your entire life for her. I'm asking you to let her change you, because that's what children do. They save us from ourselves if we let them. She knows you're successful, but what she really wants is to be wanted. What she needs is someone who will choose her, not out. Of obligation, but out of love. I never stopped believing that somewhere under all that armor, you're still the man who gave me a journal because you thought I had stories worth telling. Emma has stories too, Marcus. Beautiful, heartbreaking, hopeful stories. Please don't let fear make you turn away from the greatest gift life could give you. With all my love, Sarah P.S. She likes chocolate chip pancakes and bedtime stories. She's afraid of thunderstorms, but pretends she isn't. And she has your eyes, but she sees the world with so much more hope than you ever allowed yourself to have. Marcus read the letter twice, tears he hadn't shed in decades blurring his vision. Sarah had known him better than he'd known himself. She'd seen the man he could become, not just the man he was. Mr. Wellington? Mrs. Chen's voice was soft. The DNA results came back this morning. Emma is your daughter. The news broke like a dam bursting. By morning, every major network was running the story. Billionaire Marcus Wellington confirmed as father of orphaned girl. The DNA results had leaked, and Marcus's life became a fishbowl overnight. He stood in his office, watching protesters gather outside his building. Some held signs reading "Deadbeat Dad," while others supported him with "Everyone deserves a second chance." The irony wasn't lost on him. His greatest professional triumph and his most profound personal failure were now public spectacle. Catherine burst through his door, her usual composure cracking. "Sir, Emma's been moved to a secure facility. The media circus at St. Mary's was too much. Social Services is conducting a full investigation into your fitness as a father." Marcus felt his chest tighten. What does that mean? It means they're questioning whether a man who abandoned his child for 8 years deserves custody. Your ex-wife Victoria gave an interview this morning talking about your emotional unavailability during your marriage. The betrayal cut deep. But Marcus knew Victoria was right. He had been emotionally unavailable, to her, to their son James, to everyone who'd tried to get close to him. "There's more," Catherine continued reluctantly. "James called from London. He's flying back. He said, and I quote, 'I need to meet the sister I never knew I had, and I need to understand why Dad was never there for me, but might be there for her.'" The weight of his failures pressed down on Marcus like a physical force. 2 children, 2 chances at being a father. And he'd failed them both in different ways. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Wellington, this is Emma. Mrs. Chen gave me a phone to call you. Are you still my daddy even though everyone is angry? I'm scared." Marcus stared at the message, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. This wasn't about his reputation anymore, or his business empire, or his carefully guarded privacy. This was about a little girl who was scared and needed her father. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Wellington faced a choice that couldn't be solved with money or power or strategic maneuvering. He could retreat into his fortress of wealth and control, or he could step into the unknown territory of actually being a father. Outside his window, the protesters continued their chants, but all Marcus could hear was the echo of Emma's voice. "Are you still my daddy?" The answer to that question would determine not just Emma's future, but the man Marcus Wellington would choose to become. The courthouse steps were a battlefield of flashing cameras and shouting reporters as Marcus emerged from his custody hearing. His lawyer, David Chen, gripped his arm tightly, steering him through the chaos toward the waiting limousine. "Mr. Wellington, is it true you never paid child support? How do you feel about abandoning your daughter for 8 years? Will you be seeking full custody?" Marcus kept his head down, his jaw clenched, but inside he was screaming. 3 weeks had passed since Emma's revelation, and every day brought fresh humiliation. His stock price had dropped 15%. Board members were calling emergency meetings. His carefully built empire was cracking under the weight of public scrutiny, but none of that mattered compared to the real blow. Emma's court-appointed guardian had recommended against unsupervised visits, citing his lack of parenting. experience an emotional instability under pressure. Inside the limousine, David spread legal documents across the leather seat. The judge is giving you supervised visits twice a week, 2 hours each. But Marcus, you need to understand, the media attention is hurting your case. Emma's therapist says she's confused and frightened by all the attention. Marcus stared out the tinted window at the protesters still gathered outside his building. I never asked for any of this. No, but you're in it now. And Emma needs her father to fight for her, not retreat into damage control mode. The words stung because they were true. Marcus had spent the past 3 weeks treating this like a corporate crisis, strategizing with PR firms and legal teams. But he hadn't once asked himself the most important question: what did Emma need from him? His phone buzzed with a text from James. Dad, I'm at the airport. We need to talk before I meet Emma. And Dad, the whole world is watching how you handle this. Don't screw it up again. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his son's disappointment across an ocean. James was right. This was his chance to finally be the father he'd never learned how to be. But what if it was too late? What if he was too damaged, too closed off, too selfish to give Emma what she needed? David, he said quietly, I want to see her. Today. I don't care about the media circus. I don't care about the stock price. I need to talk to my daughter. For the first time in weeks, David smiled. Now you're talking like a father. James Wellington stood in his father's penthouse, but he wasn't the young man who'd left for London 2 years ago. At 23, he carried himself with quiet confidence, his mother's gentle features softened by his father's determined jawline. The tension between them was palpable. She looks like you, James said, studying the photograph of Emma that Marcus kept on his desk now. Same stubborn chin, same intense stare, but her eyes are softer, less guarded. Marcus poured himself a scotch, his hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. Your mother thinks I'll ruin her life like I ruined our family. Did you? James asked bluntly. Ruin our family? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus had expected anger, accusations, demands for explanations, but James's directness caught him off guard. Yes, Marcus admitted quietly. I was so focused on building this empire that I forgot why I was building it. I thought providing for you and your mother was enough. I thought success would make me worthy of love, but I was wrong. James nodded slowly. When you and Mum divorced, I blamed you for years. But living in London, watching other families, I realized something. You weren't cruel, Dad. You were just absent. Even when you were in the room, you were somewhere else. I didn't know how to be present. My own father was never there, always working, always distant. I swore I'd be different, but I became exactly like him. Well, here's your chance to break that cycle, James said, his voice softer. Emma doesn't need your money or your empire. She needs you to show up, really show up. Marcus looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw a man who'd grown up without him. The guilt was overwhelming, but there was something else. Pride. Despite his failures, James had become a good man. I'd like to meet her, James continued. If that's okay with you, she should know she has a brother who cares about her. She'd like that, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. James, I know I can't undo the past, but... Dad, James interrupted gently, Emma doesn't care about the past. She's 8. All she cares about is whether you'll be there for her future. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. For the first time in years, Marcus hugged his son, and for the first time in years, James hugged him back. The supervised visit room at Family Services felt like a prison, with its beige walls and uncomfortable plastic chairs. But when Emma walked in, clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit, Marcus forgot about everything else. She looked smaller than he remembered, more fragile. The media attention had taken its toll, dark circles under her green eyes, a nervous habit of biting her lip. But when she saw him, her face lit up with pure joy. "Daddy!" She ran to him, and Marcus caught her in his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "Hello, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've missed you so much." They sat together on the small couch, Emma curled against his side like she belonged there. The social worker, Mrs. Patterson, watched from the corner, taking notes. "Why are all those people so angry at you?" Emma asked, her voice small. Marcus chose his words carefully. "Because they think I should have found you sooner, and they're right. But Mommy said you didn't know about me. She said she wanted to tell you, but she was scared." "Scared of what?" Emma looked up at him with those impossibly wise eyes. "Scared you wouldn't want me. Mommy said sometimes grown-ups get scared of loving people because it might hurt." The simplicity of it took Marcus's breath away. Sarah had understood him completely, his fear of vulnerability, his terror of loss, his tendency to push away the people who mattered most. "Emma, I want you to know something very important," he said, tilting her chin up so she could see his eyes. "I will always want you, always. No matter what anyone says, no matter what happens, you are my daughter and I love you. Even though you didn't know me before, especially because I didn't know you before. I missed 8 years of your life, and that's the biggest mistake I've ever made. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Emma studied his face intently. "Mommy used to say that love isn't about perfect timing. It's about choosing to love someone every day, even when it's hard." Marcus felt his heart crack open. This 8-year-old child was wiser than he'd ever been. "Your mother was a very smart woman. Will you tell me about when you knew her, before I was born?" So Marcus did. He told Emma about Sarah's kindness, her intelligence, her beautiful handwriting. He told her about the journal he'd given her, and how Sarah had always believed people had stories worth telling. "She kept that journal," Emma said quietly. "She wrote about you sometimes. Happy things, not sad things. She said you were good at pretending to be tough, but really you were just lonely." The truth of it hit Marcus like a physical blow. All these years, he'd thought he was protecting himself by keeping people at arm's length, but he'd just been lonely, building higher and higher walls that kept out both pain and joy. "I was lonely," he admitted, "but I'm not anymore. Do you know why?" Emma shook her head. "Because I found you, and you found me." The emergency board meeting was called for 6 p.m. on a Friday, the kind of timing that meant serious trouble. Marcus sat at the head of the conference table, facing 12 stone-faced board members who'd built their fortunes alongside his, but were now ready to sacrifice him to protect their investments. Board Chairman Robert Hayes cleared his throat. "Marcus, the stock has dropped another 8% this week. 3 major clients have pulled their contracts. The media circus isn't dying down. It's getting worse." "What are you suggesting, Robert?" "Step down as CEO. Take a leave of absence. Until this paternity scandal blows over. We'll bring in interim leadership." "No." Marcus's voice was steel. "I built this company from nothing. I won't be forced out because I'm trying to be a father to my daughter." "Your daughter?" Board member Patricia Stone leaned forward. "Marcus, you abandoned this child for 8 years. Now you're having some midlife crisis, playing house while our company burns." The attack was calculated, designed to provoke him into the kind of emotional outburst that would justify their coup. But instead of anger, Marcus felt something unexpected. "Clarity, you're right," he said quietly. "I did abandon her. For 8 years I was too selfish and too scared to be the father she needed. But I'm not that man anymore." He stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city he'd conquered. 25 years ago, I started this company because I wanted to prove I was worth something. I thought if I built something big enough, impressive enough, maybe I'd finally feel like I mattered. The room was dead silent. "But you know what I learned 3 weeks ago when an 8-year-old girl asked if I was her daddy? I learned that all of this He gestured at the boardroom. The view, the empire, means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. He turned back to face them. So, here's what's going to happen. I'm not stepping down. I'm not taking a leave of absence. I'm going to fight for custody of my daughter, and I'm going to be the father she deserves. And if that costs me this company, so be it. Robert Hayes's face was red with fury. You're making a mistake, Marcus. We can call for a vote of no confidence. Go ahead, Marcus said calmly. But before you do, I want you to think about something. Every single one of you has children or grandchildren, and every single one of you has worked with me long enough to know that when I commit to something, I don't fail. He gathered his papers and headed for the door. I'm committed to being Emma's
Father.
The question is, are you committed to being my partners, or are you committed to destroying a company we built together over a scared little girl who just wants her daddy? The silence that followed him out of the room spoke volumes. But for the first time in weeks, Marcus didn't care about their approval. He had something more important to fight for. Judge Margaret Rodriguez had presided over family court for 15 years. But the Wellington custody case was unlike anything she'd seen. The gallery was packed with reporters. The hallway outside buzzed with camera crews, and the public interest was unprecedented. But inside the courtroom, it came down to what it always came down to: what was best for the child. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, trying to project calm confidence while his heart hammered against his ribs. Across the aisle sat the state's attorney, arguing that Emma should remain in foster care until a suitable adoptive family could be found. Your Honor, the state's attorney began, Mr. Wellington may be the biological father, but biology doesn't make someone a parent. For 8 years, he showed no interest in this child's welfare. He has no parenting experience, no established relationship with the child, and his lifestyle is incompatible with stable child rearing. The words cut deep because they held truth. Marcus had no parenting experience beyond his failures with James. His penthouse wasn't child-proofed. His 70-hour work weeks left little time for bedtime stories and homework help. But then his lawyer stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to call a witness, James Wellington, Jr. Marcus turned in surprise as James walked to the witness stand. They hadn't discussed this. What was his son doing? Mr. Wellington, the lawyer began, you're the defendant's son from his first marriage. Can you tell the court about your father's parenting during your childhood? James looked directly at Marcus, his expression unreadable. My father was absent for most of my childhood. He missed school plays, soccer games, birthday parties. I spent years angry at him for choosing work over family. Marcus felt his heart sink. His own son was testifying against him. But James continued, 3 weeks ago I watched my father meet Emma for the first time, and I saw something I'd never seen before. I saw him truly present, truly engaged, truly there for another person. My father isn't perfect. He made mistakes with me, but Emma has changed him in ways I never could. He turned to address the judge directly. Your Honor, Emma doesn't need a perfect father. She needs her father, and for the first time in my life, I believe my dad is ready to be that man. The courtroom was silent except for the soft sound of Emma's foster mother crying in the gallery. I'd like to call one more witness, Marcus's lawyer said. Emma Wellington. The judge hesitated. The child is quite young. I want to talk, came a clear voice from the gallery. Emma stood up in her best dress, her green eyes determined. Please, can I talk to you? Judge Rodriguez had seen enough custody battles to know when a child's voice needed to be heard. Very well, but this is highly unusual. Emma walked to the witness stand with the composure of someone much older. When asked to tell the truth, she nodded solemnly and looked directly at the judge. My name is Emma Rose Wellington, and I want to live with my daddy. Why is that, Emma? Because he chose me, she said simply. He could have said I wasn't his little girl. He could have sent me away, but he didn't. He said he loves me and he's not going anywhere. Emma turned to look at Marcus, her eyes shining. And because when I'm scared at night and I call him, he comes, even when there are mean people with cameras outside, even when his friends are mad at him. He always comes when I need him. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face, not caring who saw them. That's what daddies do, Emma concluded. They come when you need them, and my daddy always comes. Judge Rodriguez removed her glasses, clearly moved. Thank you, Emma. You may step down. The deliberation took only 30 minutes. When Judge Rodriguez returned, her decision was swift and clear. The court awards custody of Emma Rose Wellington to her biological father, Marcus Wellington, with a 6-month probationary period and mandatory family counseling. Mr. Wellington, you have been given a precious gift and a tremendous responsibility. Don't waste it. As the gavel fell, Emma ran into Marcus's arms, and for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Wellington felt truly wealthy. 6 months later, Marcus Wellington stood in the kitchen of his redesigned penthouse, flower dusting his expensive shirt as he attempted to flip chocolate chip pancakes. The morning sun streamed through windows that now bore the artistic touch of an 8-year-old's handprints, and children's laughter echoed through rooms that had once been silent, monuments to his solitude. "Daddy, they're burning!" Emma giggled from her perch on the marble counter, her school uniform slightly wrinkled, her hair in pigtails that Marcus had finally learned to braid after weeks of YouTube tutorials. "I've got it!" James called from across the kitchen, swooping in to rescue breakfast with the ease of someone who'd been part of this chaotic morning routine for months now. He'd moved back from London permanently, taking a position in the company and, more importantly, embracing his role as Emma's protective big brother. "Uncle James makes better pancakes," Emma announced with the brutal honesty of childhood, causing Marcus to clutch his chest in mock devastation. "Betrayed by my own daughter," he declared dramatically, earning delighted squeals as he tickled her sides. "After everything I've sacrificed for you, my dignity, my perfectly organized life, my ability to sleep past 6 a.m. on weekends. You love it, and you know it," came a warm voice from the doorway. Dr. Sarah Chen, the family therapist who'd become almost like family herself over the past months, entered carrying her usual Friday morning coffee and wearing the patient smile of someone who'd watched this family transform week by week. Marcus looked around at the beautiful chaos of his new life. Emma's artwork covering the refrigerator, James's laptop open on the counter as he balanced work calls with breakfast. Duty, Dr. Chen settling into what had become her regular spot at their kitchen island for their weekly family sessions. This wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was infinitely better than the lonely perfection he'd built before. "How's our girl doing in school?" Dr. Chen asked, accepting a properly cooked pancake from James. "Straight A's," Marcus said proudly, ruffling Emma's hair. "And she's made 3 new best friends this week. Apparently, having a famous daddy makes you very popular at recess." "It's not because you're famous," Emma corrected seriously. "It's because you come to everything. Emma Rodriguez's dad never comes to anything, and Jessica's dad lives far away, but you come to all my stuff." The simple statement hit Marcus with the same force as her first question 6 months ago. In his previous life, he'd measured success in stock prices and board approvals. Now his greatest achievements were parent-teacher conferences, school plays, and the privilege of being the dad who never missed a moment. "Speaking of coming to things," James interjected, checking his phone, "we need to leave in 20 minutes for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Today marked the official opening of the Sarah Rose Mitchell Foundation, a comprehensive support system for single mothers and their children. Marcus had liquidated a significant portion of his personal assets to fund it, much to his board's initial horror. But the foundation had become one of his most successful ventures, not financially, but in terms of impact. They'd already helped over 200 families avoid the struggles that Sarah had faced alone. "Are you nervous?" Dr. Chen asked Emma, who would be cutting the ribbon alongside her father. Emma considered this seriously, a trait she'd inherited from Marcus along with his green eyes. "A little, but Daddy says being nervous means you care about doing something well, and caring is good." Marcus smiled, remembering when he'd first shared that wisdom during Emma's stage fright before her school's Christmas concert. She'd been terrified of forgetting her lines, and he'd recognized his own perfectionist anxiety in her tears. Teaching her to channel nervousness into preparation rather than paralysis had been as therapeutic for him as for her. "Your mother would be so proud," Dr. Chen said gently. They'd learned to speak openly about Sarah, celebrating her memory rather than tiptoeing around the grief. Emma had stories to share now, not just of missing her mother, but of honoring her legacy through the foundation and through the love she'd found with her father. "I think she knows," Emma said simply. "Sometimes when I'm with Daddy and James, I feel her smiling, like she's happy we found each other." The truth of Sarah's letter had become clearer with each passing month. She hadn't kept Emma from Marcus out of spite or fear. She'd waited until he was ready to be the father Emma deserved. Somehow, with a dying woman's intuition, she'd known that tragedy and unexpected love would be the catalysts he needed to break down the walls he'd spent decades building. "All right, Wellington family," James announced, playing the role of family organizer he'd naturally assumed time to make history. As they gathered their things, Emma's speech carefully folded in her tiny purse, Marcus's tie straightened by his daughter's careful hands, James juggling briefcase and camera to document everything. Marcus caught sight of their reflection. In the hallway mirror, they looked like what they'd become, a real family, imperfect but complete. The drive to the foundation's location took them through the neighborhood where Sarah had raised Emma alone, past the small apartment where his daughter had learned to be brave in the face of uncertainty. Marcus had visited that apartment once, standing in the tiny living room where Emma had done homework at a card table while her mother worked double shifts to pay rent. The contrast with his penthouse luxury had been devastating, but it had also been illuminating. Emma hadn't needed wealth to thrive. She'd needed love, attention, and the security of knowing she mattered to someone. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was everything Marcus had hoped it would be. Local news covered the event, but the focus was on the families being helped rather than the billionaire's redemption story. Emma delivered her speech with poise that would have made any father proud, talking about how her mother had taught her that helping others was the best way to honor someone's memory. "My daddy used to think being successful meant having lots of money," she concluded, her clear voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "But now he knows that being successful means making sure other kids don't have to be as scared as I was. When my mommy got sick, that's what real success looks like." The applause was thunderous, but Marcus barely heard it. He was too busy marveling at the wisdom of this remarkable little girl, who'd appeared in his lobby like an angel sent to save him from himself. Later that evening, after the celebration dinner and the endless photos and interviews, Marcus tucked Emma into her bed in the room they'd designed together. Gone were the stark white walls and minimalist furniture of his bachelor existence. Her room was an explosion of color and creativity, murals they'd painted together, bookshelves overflowing with stories they read together every night, and a window seat where they talked about everything from homework troubles to her dreams for the future. "Daddy," she said as he kissed her forehead, "do you ever miss your old life?" Before me, Marcus considered the question seriously, giving her the honesty she deserved. "Sometimes I miss how simple everything was. Making decisions was easier when I only had to think about myself. But Emma, you know what I've learned?" "What?" "Simple isn't the same as good. My old life was simple, but it was also empty. This life with you is complicated and messy, and sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's full of love. And I'd rather have a complicated life full of love than a simple life with no one to share it with. Emma smiled sleepily. I love you too, Daddy, even when you burn the pancakes. Especially when I burn the pancakes, Marcus corrected, earning a giggle as he turned off her light. Walking back to his own room, Marcus passed the study where he'd once spent lonely nights building his empire. Now it served dual purposes, his home office and Emma's homework station. Her math worksheets were scattered across the desk, where he'd once reviewed million-dollar contracts, and somehow those worksheets felt more important than any deal he'd ever closed. James found him there, 2 cups of coffee in hand and a knowing smile on his face. Penny for your thoughts, Dad. Just thinking about how different everything is, Marcus said, accepting the coffee gratefully. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be measuring my day's success by whether I properly braided an 8-year-old's hair, I'd have had them committed. And now I can't imagine measuring success any other way. Marcus sank into his chair, feeling the bone-deep satisfaction that came from a day well lived. I spent 49 years thinking I was building something meaningful, but I was just building walls. Emma didn't just give me a daughter, she gave me a purpose, James nodded, settling into the chair across from his father. Over the past months, they'd rebuilt their own relationship through their shared love for Emma. James had become the brother Emma never knew she needed, and Marcus had finally learned how to be present for both his children. The board meeting went well today, James reported. Stock prices are at an all-time high. Turns out investors like CEOs who demonstrate strong family values and community commitment. Who knew? Marcus laughed. The same board members who tried to force him out 6 months ago were now praising his work-life balance and using his transformation as a company selling point. The foundation had generated unprecedented positive press, and Marcus's reputation had evolved from ruthless billionaire to devoted father and philanthropist. But the real victory wasn't in stock prices or public approval. The real victory was in moments like this, sitting with his son while his daughter slept safely in her room, planning weekend adventures and family vacations, being needed and loved, not for what he could provide, but for who he'd chosen to become. I have something for you, James said, producing a wrapped package from behind his chair. Emma and I worked on this together. Inside was a leather-bound photo album, starting with the first picture ever taken of Marcus and Emma together, that chaotic day in the lobby when she'd asked her life-changing question. The album chronicled their journey: awkward supervised visits, Emma's first night in his penthouse, family dinners with James, the foundation groundbreaking, school events, quiet moments at home. The final page held a new family portrait they'd taken just last week, along with a note in Emma's careful handwriting: "To the best daddy in the world. Thank you for choosing me every day. Love always, your Emma." Marcus's vision blurred as he traced his daughter's words with his finger. 18 months ago, he'd thought he had everything. Now he knew he'd had nothing at all. "She wanted you to have this tonight," James explained, "because tomorrow marks exactly 1 year since you got custody. She wanted to remind you how far you've both come. 1 year. It felt like a lifetime and an instant simultaneously. A year of learning that love wasn't about grand gestures, but about showing up consistently. A year of discovering that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but the foundation of real strength. A year of understanding that success wasn't about conquering the world, but about creating a home where love could flourish. As Marcus prepared for bed in his transformed penthouse, still luxurious but now lived in, warm, filled with the evidence of a life shared, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. Emma's question in that lobby hadn't just changed his life. It had revealed who he'd always had the potential to become. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: parent-teacher conferences, bedtime negotiations, the ongoing balancing act of running a business empire while being present for his daughters. Childhood. But Marcus Wellington was no longer the man who faced challenges alone. He was a father. And for the first time in his life, that was enough. That was everything. The last thing he saw before sleep was the photo on his nightstand. Emma on his shoulders at the foundation ribbon cutting, both of them laughing, James beside them with his arm around his father's shoulder. Three people who'd found their way to each other despite years of distance and pain, proving that it's never too late to choose love over fear, connection over isolation, family over everything else the world might offer. In the morning, he'd wake up to flour-dusted counters and imperfect pancakes, and the beautiful chaos of a life built around love. And Marcus Wellington, the man who'd once thought he had everything, would know with absolute certainty that now he truly did.